Breckinridge, the name we honor, was founded in 1929 and the building was erected in 1930. Breckinridge ceased to exist as an institution of learning in 1982. Today, 11 years after those big glass double doors closed for the last time behind the last straggler, the mother of all class reunions is now in progress. Everyone who attended Breck was invited, and you can rest assured a strenuous effort was made to locate everybody. This presentation is not intended to be a historical document, but more of a family album for all of us who were part of the big, loving family of Breckinridge. It is friends sharing memories of a special time in a place that will never cease to exist in the hearts of those of us who loved her.
I graduated from Breckinridge in 1938. I started Breckinridge in the basement of Fields Hall, 1928. And I believe I moved over to Breckinridge when I was in the 5th grade. I think that's correct, 4th or 5th grade one. It was probably the nicest school building in this part of the country when we moved in because it was brand new. Everything over there was super.
I started in the school in Fields Hall also.
We just thought that Breck had the greatest facility physically, that the building was so pretty, the laboratories were good compared to what we'd been used to, and the teachers just seemed to take on a different air at Breck.
Ours was the first class to go from the 1st grade through the 12th.
In 1941, the Breckinridge family was disrupted by World War II. Some of our boys went to war while the rest of us kept the home fires burning.
During the war, now we didn't have a yearbook because of the paper shortage. We didn't have a senior trip because of the gas shortage.
You had to go and buy, you couldn't buy hose because there was, all the nylons were being used for parachutes, and you wore leg makeup during the war. That the banquets weren't anything like they are now, junior, senior banquets. And so for little favors, we had little tiny tomato plants on the table.
We had the sailors on campus.
That was a big temptation.
Well, I succumbed to the temptation. I dated the sailors.
Even though the world was at war, life went on at Breck, and sports were an important part of that life.
You started from the 1st grade up, trying to grow up so you could be on the basketball team. That was, I think, the desire of every boy in Breck.
And the boys and girls of Breckinridge grew up to play not only basketball, but baseball, soccer, golf, and tennis. They competed in swimming, track and field events, excelling in all.
Surprisingly, a lot of people don't know the heritage of basketball at Breckinridge. To give you an example, from 1937 to 1982, for a period of 45 years, at Breckinridge basketball, the Breckinridge basketball team won 25 district tournaments. They played in the regional tournament 25 years. They won 25 games and lost 21 in those 25 years. They went to the finals of the regional tournament 8 times and won it 4 times. They finished 5 times in the semifinals and got beat 12 times in the 1st round and won 1 state championship.
I tried to walk like Sonny Allen for many, many years, and finally my father told me if I didn't quit, I was going to have to buy my own shoes because, as we all know, Sonny has a unique walk.
So I ran over to him and asked for his autograph, and he very graciously wrote out Jack Holly. So I ran back to sit down. In about 2 minutes, I went back over and I said, "Can I have your autograph?" He looked at me funny, but he gave me another autograph. I went back to sit down again. 3rd time I came over, I said, "Can I have your autograph?" He said, "Little girl, what do you want with all these autographs?" And I said, "Well, when I get 25, I can trade them for one of Sonny Allen's."
And undoubtedly, the most enjoyable time was when we went to the state basketball tournament when I was a junior in 37. We actually had a better team in 38, but we got beat with 10 seconds to go, and Russell beat us. And the next year, so we didn't get to go.
Score at the half was kind of disappointing, though. They were 20 points ahead of us. And part of the problem was me. You know, you said I was pretty good on defense. And I was afraid to go to the dressing room at halftime, and most all of us were. So we run down there in the auxiliary gym, which I remember sitting there waiting for Bobby to come down and tell us how we could do better. He didn't show up for a long time. We were getting a little nervous. When he did, reading the newspaper, he walked over to you, Bill Banks, Roscoe Hutchinson, Don Batson. Last was me. Says here, you're probably one of the greatest defensive players in the state, high school. Batson, you're the fastest, you're great too. Says there's one thing wrong with all this. Says that bunch over in that other dressing room don't know this. Now, if we're going to win this game, they've got to learn how great you are. So Batson, you and Scroggins take this newspaper, you go to their dressing room, you read it to them, make them understand now that you all are great, and they can't be doing this to you.
When Olive Hill beat Breckinridge out of the regional tournament, and I believe it was in '44, that I was so upset that my mother convinced me that the referee had cheated and they would play the game over again tomorrow. That was the only way I'd go to bed that night.
I think we were voted the worst cheerleading squad of the whole camp. I remember we didn't practice before we went. We didn't know what cheers we were going to do. And all of the other squads that were there had did all their calisthenics and had all of these stunts they were doing. So we tried to follow after them, and boy, were we sorry. The next day, we could hardly get out of bed. We were so sore.
When you put on that uniform and you came out of the locker room, and the first thing you'd do, you'd scan the stands, and you'd see Coach Allen, and a lot of times Jack Carter and Roger, Larry Blair, a lot of people that were Breck alumni would be up in the stands, and you'd want to do good and keep the tradition going. And I just think it was a tremendous sense of pride.
Because of the reputation of the school and its heritage in basketball, I think that each of us who played on the teams after '46, even before, I think everyone knew they were somewhat special.
What was Breck all about? What made Breck so special? Ask any Breck brat, and you'll learn that it was not only excellence in academics and sports, but that the Breck tradition and the relationships created continued through life. And through it all was the fun.
I moved back down to Kentucky last June, and I started talking to Jim Clay and Bill Clay and a few others around Lexington. And the idea of having a complete Breck reunion had been kicked around for many years. So I just got everybody together and had a meeting. And we had several meetings at Lexington, and then we went to Morehead and got people like Barbara Fenton involved reluctantly, but she's having a lot of fun now. And it carried on. It got real big, much bigger than what any of us thought. But we're having a good time getting a reunion. And one of the reasons we wanted to do this was because the students at Breckinridge were more than just fellow students. They were more like brothers and sisters. And it was a closeness that I don't think any of us will ever forget.
One prank I remember, Miss Nyla reminded me that this morning was in freshman biology class when several of us put a whole lot of Alka-Seltzer in some fish tanks, probably about 10 aquariums, and I don't know how many fish we killed. Probably not as funny now as it was then, but it did make an impression because she remembered it and reminded us of it this morning.
The thing that meant the most to me going to Breck was the closeness that we got between the students in a particular class, being together for 12 years. We truly became more like brothers and sisters, and in some cases, closer than that, and a lot of those relationships have continued on today.
Let's see, Dick Staggs had a blue and gold Model A, and it had, you know, neat little sayings written on the side of it and painted. And one of them I remember was, "Peaches, here's your can," and the other one was, "Don't laugh, lady, your daughter may be in here." Well, it was a real hazard to be on the road in that thing because we had to drag our feet to stop it. And it didn't have windows, it didn't have brakes, it didn't have a horn. I remember Roy Clemens. Instead of blowing the horn, Roy had a bugle. And Roy would sit in the back seat, and whenever they would pass somebody, which was rare, Roy would play, you know, reveille or taps or something on the bugle.
I guess it is proven fact that the old woodpecker will come by and he'll pick a hole in your head and he'll pour that knowledge in and he'll salve it over and you'll get knowledge because you're exposed to it. It's like throwing a dog in water. He'll get wet.
When I went to school, there was no doubt that I was going to go on to college. that was just something that, you know, I felt was a given. You go to school, you graduate, you go on to college, you graduate, then you get a job.
I think it was really a great institution, and the kids benefited from it whether they wanted to or not.
Jim Boudry was for our age group, was a good friend to everybody. And when we lost Jim, I remember the cloud that hung over the school. I also remember feeling expressions of love and our gratitude for having known him.
It was kind of ironic in a way. We had our senior skip day, which was a Breck. I guess most schools have traditions, like skip day, and ours was scheduled on a Monday, and Jim passed away on Sunday. It was kind of one of those, when our class, like one of the last times we were together, because we were about ready to graduate, but every member of our class was out there at the lake that day, and like I said, it wasn't the senior skip day we had planned, but it was almost kind of a day to just get things in perspective.
Larry Fannin and I were asked to represent the first and last Mr. and Miss Breckinridge.
I was Miss Breckinridge in 1982, and I was in the last graduating class, and Mr. Breckinridge with me was Clayton Black.
Whatever happened on that senior prom?
Senior prom?
Been wondering about this for 25 years now. I've been wondering about that.
Well, there's been rumored that a date was broken like 2 nights or 3 nights before the prom, and somebody had already had a dress. And,
yeah, I heard about that.
And I guess I was the one that broke the date, and I think you were the girl.
That went into therapy for 20
You went into
years,
therapy, yeah. And I guess now's the time to publicly apologize to the world for breaking that date 25 years ago.
I think so. I think this is our big 25.
25 years, and
Should I accept this apology?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I have to get down on my knees.
It's accepted.
Now, in the first grade play, I was Peter Peter Pumpkin Eater, and Kay Evans was Mrs. Pumpkin Eater.
I was Little Boy Blue.
You were Little Boy Blue.
What was that?
You were...
Old King Cole. Old King? I remember that now. Yeah. Yeah, I had this fancy jacket with the black dots on it. Yeah.
And a merry old soul.
And a merry old soul was in it.
In the 5th or 6th grade, one of the classic things that happened, I forget whether it was Miss Mellie's class. I believe we were on the 2nd level, because we saw this bucket go up one day with Larry Blair in it, raised to the roof. And Larry had gotten into a tar bucket, and they'd been repairing the roof at the time, and they'd been using this rope and pulley and buckets to tar the roof. And Larry decided to see what the roof looked like at that time, and there were many of us all too eager to get him up there. So we raised him up, and then we had to let him down fast, and I think his head bounced off each ledge, window ledge, as we let him down. We did keep him from crashing. We stopped him about that far from the ground.
Well, we got to tell something on Bill Ellick. Bill and some of the other guys would get up into the 3rd floor art room right over Mr. Denny's room and drop things down, dangle them in front of the windows in front of Mr. Denny's class.
For one reason or another, we had been out to Bill's farm and collected an adequate supply of calendar. And on the way back, we decided a very appropriate thing to do would be take a paper bag, fill it full of fresh cow manure, and we conned Jimmy Johnson, as I recall, to sneak on Mr. Denny's front porch and ignite the bag. Beat on the door, and we ran like we hid in the shrubs. And sure enough, Mr. Denny came out the door and as red faced as he could be, and jumped with both feet onto that flaming bag of cow manure.
We all used to go play basketball in junior high, and we were one of the worst places I hated to go was Haldeman, up to Haldeman. It was cold. They had no dressing room. We'd get dressed before we went, and we'd go up there. But we were like, I don't know, 12 or 13 years old, young kids, you know. And we'd go up there, and their players would drive up in their cars,
And they'd have beards on, and you know, you could tell they'd been drinking, and you know, they wanted to kill us. You know.
Well, our yearbooks are full of memories of good times, and I really enjoy looking back through those old yearbooks and remembering the people who wrote the little messages, remember this, remember that, and once again, the friendships and the good times that we all had together, and the real support that we had from each other was wonderful.
It doesn't mean as much to my kids to go back to a reunion because their class was so large they knew maybe a handful of people. But golly, this is just incredible. It really is incredible that we're all coming back.
No, we never left Breck, for our traditions and friends remain with us along the way. Our ideals and moral standards were instilled in us by those wonderful and dedicated, put upon, never to be forgotten teachers and faculty.
When I came to the campus of Morehead State College the first time with my beloved wife and 2 sons, we drove west on the college boulevard. The first building we saw was on the right, the beautiful building, the most beautiful building that was ever built on this campus.
Of all my long professional career, perhaps the 6 years I served as director of Breckinridge stands among the best. I thoroughly enjoyed those years from 1962 to 1968. I think the thing I enjoyed about it was the solid faculty that I found there, such people as Mr. Denny, Mr. Young, Charlie Jones, Thelma Evans, Bernice Jackson, Stella Rose Stewart, Ira Mae Smelly, and Mrs. Waltz. Some of those stand out. And Ms. Rice, Virginia Rice in home economics. Mabel Barber in the 7th and 8th grade. Those are outstanding teachers. I think that's the thing I determined real quick once I arrived. Let me quickly run down some of the things I think that happened there during the period of time I was there that I give credit to the teachers and others. We put in a non-graded primary and intermediate program very similar to what the state of Kentucky is doing now.
Miss Neal, the 1st and 2nd grade teachers, and there wasn't much paddling then, and we were little kids, and if you were talking too much, she would take you out in the hall and bend your hand back and take a ruler and smack your palm of your hand. And you know that had to hurt an awful lot.
So Mom had some green cake coloring there, food coloring. So I went in and proceeded to make my hair green. And it was tough getting through the night because I had to put a towel on the pillow, and Peggy had to keep it a secret. And then, of course, the next morning I got up early and didn't eat breakfast. Went running out of the house and ran to school, and Mom should have suspected. In fact, she probably did at that point. Mrs. Day didn't say a thing in her first class. That was the first class I had. But I'd forgotten about that the second class was Amy Irene Moore.